Welcome to the Pandemonium Witches podcast, where the ADHD has just a touch of the tism, where the true crime is just as scary as the hauntings and unsolved cases, and the hosts never stay on topic for long. I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Em. And I'm Meg.
We are the Pandemonium. I love your sister. It's freaking bad.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Buenos dias.
Because now it's a thing.
It's a thing now. I can't not do it.
Your daughter is so cute. We have matching shirts.
Thank you. She looks exactly like my sister. But she is mine. I do remember everything.
Just for
that
clarification.
happened. Yeah, she just looks and acts exactly like my sister. Which is cool because my sister is adorable. So, like, my child definitely lucked out.
I mean, that's good, though. I do not look like my brother, either of them. I look like my grandmother.
I look like Dr. Sister. Just
Like
a
my
little bit
dad.
taller.
I was the first girl born in the family in a very, very long time because my dad has 3 brothers, there's 4 boys. And yeah, they were like, oh, that's not what a girl looks like. Hi.
Like, thanks, guys.
Right? Like, did you have to say it like that? Thank God I was too small to, like, understand.
So I just posted it in the chat, picture of myself, my grandmother, and my mother. And anytime I would date anybody, I'd be like, okay, see me? I look great, right? I was 26 in that photo. I don't look a day over 16. And then I would say, you see my mom? She's in her 40s. See my grandma? She's in her 80s. So if you're okay with this, then we can keep going. I showed it to Josh right before we got married, and he went, nice.
I love that.
I mean, at least you know what you're going to look like when you get older.
Right? I can prep for that. I'm like, I know what my skincare and routine needs to be.
My grandma used Aztec clay until the day she died. You know that lotion, the Aztec clay lotion or whatever, from the 70s?
Makes sense, though. Got to moisturize the skin, though.
Right? Feels like a good move.
Absolutely. Do you guys have your, we're starting early. Do you guys have your hydration stations?
I'll even use mine. Bonus.
And have we taken our meds?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. I needed to think.
The questionable as.
It's like, did I? Like, indeed she did.
So we're going to be coming to a close here pretty soon. Our last episode is right around the corner.
I know.
Already?
It's insane.
So when this episode comes out, let me just get the schedule pulled up because I have it saved on my thing.
Friday after next.
Yep. So then we only have, I think, four episodes left. Let me just double check. I think I might have my math wrong, but
Look, math does not get along with me.
so we have 5 episodes before our final episode. Our final episode is the 6th episode of the month, which is episode number 13. So this
13.
this episode's going to be episode 107.
Yep.
Such a big number.
Which
So
is hilarious because it's coming out on the 13th. And so it's 107, 1017.
All the 7s.
There's a numerology in there somewhere.
And the ones.
My brain's not firing on all cylinders, so Rachel, it's your turn to go.
Okay. So we're going back across the pond to Scotland this time.
Ooh. I just read a book about Scotland. And it wasn't like a book about Scotland. It was literally just no, I've read 2. just the setting for both books, and it was lovely. So I honestly am absolutely no help to this episode whatsoever.
I know two things about Scotland. They're not very impressive.
The
What
things
are
or the
they?
Scotland?
So claudas, like the clauda ring or whatever, if men were going out to war and they were afraid about their wives getting hurt or anything like that, because men wouldn't attack a woman who was married or whatever, they would brand the back of her leg with the clauda. So that way they would see that it was, but then again, this was during the times when the mountains were getting flooded and invaded. Anyways, and then there's a good chunk of Outlander was filmed there too, as well.
Heck yeah. Love me some Sam Heughan. I'm in.
I mean, considering that the whole premise is majority of it takes place in Scotland, so I would hope they filmed it in Scotland.
I don't think. Oh, you can. This is my Outlander shelf.
I've read 2.5 of the books. I need to finish reading the series. I started watching the TV series, but I really like the books better.
It's a hefty series, though. I did not read Go Tell It to the Bees. I didn't read that last one yet.
I haven't. I've only read the first 4.
I think I need to reread all of them because it's been so many years, and I have too many books on my list for that right now. So who knows if that will happen.
I watched the series. I haven't seen it since season 2, and I still have to watch The Witcher. And we talked about this before. I need your recommendations on things I need to watch that I haven't watched, that we can pick up on season 2 and tell you what I have and have not watched yet. So,
Are you planning to watch the most recent series of The Witcher now that they've switched out my good pal
no,
Henry? Okay.
no.
Because I feel like I have to give it a shot, but also I'm really mad. So I don't know that I will be partaking. And also, it sucks because Liam is not a bad looking dude.
He's not.
He's just not the Witcher. He's just not. And so I feel bad where I'm like, it does feel a little Timu version. But yeah, I don't know. It's not Henry, and that upsets me. Because no one's gonna be as gruff and growly as he is.
I do have a special place for Henry Cavill, mainly because he plays Warhammer 4000. He also plays D&D, and he does LARPing. And I'm just sitting here going, he's nerdy like us. He's nerdy like us. One of us.
And now
One of us.
he's a dad.
I know. But like, why? I can't remember why he backed away from The Witcher.
I know. It's because they moved too far away from the original books. They did not keep, and he said, he's like, I'll be here as long as you guys stay true to what's written. And they decided not to. So it was a difference where he was like, I just can't keep honoring this. So it was because of like his
Fair.
own, I love it. I'm in.
Completely
And as
understandable.
he is a fan of the game and the books and the everything else. And so he was like, I can't put my name behind something that's not going to follow what we all expect it to be. The fandom expects.
100% understandable.
I can get behind that. I was not okay when they deviated Outlander the way that they did. And if you haven't read the books and you haven't seen the shows, don't. I think that's the main reason why I'm having a hard time going back to watching it, is because it deviated so hard. And one of my friends was like, well, just watch Game of Thrones. And I was like, I can't, because being an author, I can't justify killing off so many characters for no reason aside from because he wanted to, not even for the plot, not even for the storyline, just because.
I'm with you.
I can talk about that all day, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about Scotland.
Well, specifically Edinburgh, but the more you know thing is the national animal of Scotland is the unicorn.
I did know that.
I do love
Because
that.
it's a symbol of purity, innocence, and power and it's been featured on the royal coat of arms since the mid 1500s. So that's why for the UK coat of arms, you see the lion on one side, which represents England, and then the unicorn on the other, which is Scotland. So I just little random fact.
The reason why I know about that is because I watched a game show when I was over in London, and it was between a drag queen and another guy, and they were like, "And what is the universal symbol for Scotland?" And they were like, "Oh, that would be a unicorn." And I was like, "Oh, I love this. I love this so much."
So we're going to talk about Edinburgh Castle. So just going to go ahead and preface this with, if I mispronounce things, I'm sorry. I do my best, but words are hard.
It's also not English.
You're correct. It's Welsh.
So I think you're good. My son's science teacher is Welsh. And he's like, sometimes, he's like, she always uses that accent. I'm like, that's her voice. Like, that's how she sounds, my dude.
Actually, it's not Welsh.
No,
Dear
it's actually like
Catherine.
Scottish, right?
It's
Like it's its own.
Gaelic. It's Scott
There you
Gaelic.
go. Scottish Gaelic.
Welsh is for in Wales. Totally different place.
They're
No.
all across the pond.
I'm
Just
mainly
wanted
saying
to
it.
specify that.
I'm mainly saying it so I can fuck with one person in particular who's gonna, video call me on Snapchat and be like, "Listen here, you little shit." And I just want to hear his angry little tiny, leprechaun of a voice.
They don't think they
course.
like when you say that.
He's literally a professional leprechaun. So yeah, I am gonna say that.
I'm just saying.
But
How does one become a professional leprechaun? Either you are or you are not.
So
A wee man.
he's 3'6", 3'7", and he's a professional. Like, you can rent him out. He's a professional leprechaun. Like, they have professional princess, and there's superheroes. He's a professional leprechaun.
I don't think using the term "you can rent him out"
That's
is-
where I am. I was like, I don't
is
know if we're allowed to
correct.
say that. I was like, I feel like that will get us in trouble.
No, you can
You
rent him out
can
because
Hire him. There you go. Let's go with hire
that's
him.
the right word.
Please don't rent people. You're not trying on a dress for a wedding. Good Lord.
Dang it, Kat! We
I was
have
like, I
to
don't-
use the correct words here.
So just for safety's sake, we're not renting out people. That's not a business plan.
We
Or
are not
legal.
encouraging people to rent out other people. You can hire
No.
them and pay them a fair wage, but we are not.
With a tip.
Yes, of course, always. Okay, on that note, let's get started.
God.
Oh my god. So the castle stands on what is known as Castle Rock, not like Fraggle Rock.
I was just going to say, no, it's Fraggle Rock. Down in Fraggle Rock.
So Castle Rock has been occupied by humans since at least the Iron Age. There has been a royal castle on the rock since the reign of Malcolm III in the 11th century, and the castle continued to be a royal residence until 1633. From the 15th century, the castle's residential role declined, and by the 17th century, it was principally used as a military garrison. Its importance as part of Scotland's national heritage was recognized increasingly from the early 19th century onward, and various restoration programs have been carried out over the last century and a half.
All seems kosher. I feel like it's not going to be for a little while, but seems all right now.
I save the scary stuff parts for last. The castle has played a prominent role in Scottish history and has served variously as a royal residence, an arsenal, a treasury, a national archive, a mint, a prison, a military fortress, and the home of the Honours of Scotland, which is the Scottish regalia.
Mint and a prison is interesting. Because, like, hey, is that why it became a prison? Because people just kept breaking in and they're like, you know what? They can get in, but they ain't getting out.
It's Hotel California-esque. You can check in, but you can never leave.
That's what I'm saying.
So, as one of the most important strongholds in the Kingdom of Scotland, the castle was involved in many historical conflicts from the Wars of the Scottish Independence in the 14th century to the Jacobite Rising of 1745. Hey! Outlander! Tying that in. Research undertaken in 2014 identified 26 sieges in its 1100-year history, giving it a claim to having been the most besieged place in Great Britain and one of the most attacked in the world.
Whoa.
That's quite a bit of history.
Yeah, sorry. I had to yell at the cat. She was fucking with a box.
That's an everyday thing, though. For
Yes, this is true. This is true. But
She would
can she wait until after the podcast is done?
no, she would like to be included.
She always does. So, a few of the present buildings predate the Lang Siege of 1573, when the medieval defenses were largely destroyed by artillery bombardment. The most notable exceptions are St. Margaret's Chapel, which was built in the early 12th century, and the chapel is regarded as the oldest building in Edinburgh. And then there's the Royal Palace and the early 16th century Great Hall. So the castle is the site of the Scottish National War Memorial and the National War Museum. The British Army is still responsible for some parts of the castle, although its presence is now largely ceremonial and administrative. The castle is the regimental headquarters of the Royal Regiment of Scotland and the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, and houses their regimental museums along with that of the Royal Scots. The castle, in the care of Historic Environmental Scotland, is Scotland's most and the United Kingdom's second most visited paid tourist attraction, with over 2.2 million visitors in 2019, and over 70% of leisure visitors to Edinburgh visiting the castle. 2.2 million visitors? That's insane.
So many people.
As the backdrop to the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo during the annual Edinburgh Festival, the castle has become a recognizable symbol of Edinburgh in particular and of Scotland as a whole. I could have broke it down and went into deep dives onto every single piece of the castle itself, into like St. Margaret's Castle, like everything, but we would be here all fucking day because each thing was like every time pretty much like it was rebuilt, they just added more parts to it, like they do. So we've been here forever. There is an extinct volcano, which is what Castle Rock is made out of. It was built on the plug of the volcano, and the summit is about 130 meters, which is 430 feet above sea level, with rocky cliffs to the north, south, and west, which rose to about 80 meters, 260 feet high above the surrounding landscape. So it literally is on a mountain, pretty much. This meant that the only way to get up or down was to the east, and so because of all this, it made attacks harder. So it was the perfect place for a fortress. Well, with all of this, and because it's on top of a extinct volcano, it meant that you had to bring water up to the castle because there was no water you could drill down into. So, despite sinking a 34-meter, 112 feet deep well, the water supply often ran out during a siege or a drought because you could only tap so much. The earliest written settlement of the area was from 2nd century AD, thanks to Ptolemy's map. I know I did not pronounce his name right. I don't
Sounded
really
good to me.
So, in the early 1990s, there was an archaeological excavation that uncovered evidence that the area had been settled during the late Bronze Age or early Iron Age. Sorry if you heard that. That was Fluffy trying to get up onto her windowsill. Yeah, pretty much. So this potentially made Castle Rock the longest continuously occupied site in Scotland. The excavation pointed out the probable existence of an enclosed hill fort that was on the rock, but only fringes of the site were excavated. Signs of occupation included some Roman material, including pottery, bronzes, and brooches, which implied a possible trading relationship between the Votadini and the Romans, beginning with Agricola's Northern Campaign in 82 AD, and continuing through the establishment of the Antony Wall around 104 AD. So, like, way back. The castle doesn't appear in written records until around 600 AD. So, because of the site's military potential, the Iron Age people built a hill fort up on the rock, because then you could see around forever. Evil medieval poetry tells of a war band that feasted here for a year before riding to their deaths in battle. The Irish Annals records that state that in 613, after the events related in E. Gododinen, was besieged by the Angles under Oswald of Northumbria, and the tribe was defeated. So the territory around Edinburgh then became part of the Kingdom of Northumbria, which was itself absorbed by England in the 10th century. Lothian became part of Scotland during the reign of Indulf, which was 954 to 2. I have practiced saying those words, and I know I still did not get them right.
It's the thought that counts.
We do our best. So the archaeological evidence for up to this point is based entirely on the analysis of the middens or the domestic refuge heaps, because there was no evidence of structures. Few conclusions can therefore be derived about the status of the settlement during this period, although the midden deposits show no clear break since Roman times. So, according to the earlier chronicler Geoffrey of Monmouth, Ebrachius had 50 children by his 20 wives and was founder of York, Dumbarton, and the Maiden's Castle.
You said 50? Like 3 was a lot for this body, and that's still only 20 wives. That's multiple children per wife. My dude.
Yeah, I mean, 50 out of 20, yeah, but still, one of them had to be doing the most.
That's 2 point something per wife. Not that we're dividing
Lot.
children, but like math is mathing.
Right. So the Maiden's Castle occurs frequently up until the 16th century. The name does, because it was just common name. Oh yeah, the Maiden's Castle. It's kind of like, oh yeah, go to that tree, hitting a left, kind of thing. So the castle appears in charters of David I, who reigned from 1124 to 1153, and his successors in the Kingdom of Scotland, although the reasons for it is not known. But of course, you know, a lot of it was word of mouth, was oral history. William Camden's Survey of Britain in 1607 records state that the Britons called it Castle Myned Agnard, or Winged Rock. The Scots, the Maiden's Castle, and the Virgin's Castle of certain young maidens of the Picts rolled blonde who were kept there in old time. According to the 7th Antiquarian Father Richard Hay, the maidens were a group of nuns who were ejected from the castle and replaced by canons, considered fitter to live among soldiers. The name may have also been derived from a cult of the Nine Maidens type of legend. Arthurian legends, because they're, 17th century, they loved King Arthur and all that, suggested that the site once held a shrine to Morgan Le Fay, one of 9 sisters. Later, Saint Monina, said to be one of the 9 companions, reputedly invested a church at Edinburgh, along with Dumbarton and other places. So, Kat, did Morgan Le Fay that name sound familiar at all?
Yes, because she was an actual person. People think that she wasn't a person, that she was an actual fae, like she was a part of story, but she was an actual human.
Yes. So for those that don't know, she also led way to Morgana, along with other names that she can be called. Just for
so,
those.
One of the deities I follow is
that's where that
Lady
comes
Morgan,
from.
or
okay,
Morgana, or the Morgan, and that's
So
who
anyway,
that
so
is
back on
based off
topic.
of.
The first the first reference to a castle at Edinburgh is John of Fordun's account of the death of King Malcolm III from 1031 to 1093. Anyways, so John of Fordun was a Scottish chronicler. He was a secular priest and composed his history in the later part of the 14th century. He describes his widow, the future St. Margaret, King Malcolm III's widow, not John's widow, as residing at the Castle of Maidens when she is brought news of his death in November of 1093. John's account goes on to relate how Margaret died of grief within days and how Malcolm's brother Donald Bain laid siege to the castle. However, John's chronicle was not written until the later 14th century, and the near contemporary account of the life of St. Margaret by Bishop Turgot makes no mention of a castle. So it's like two conflicting sides. But during the reign of Malcolm III and then his sons, Edinburgh Castle became one of the most significant royal centers in Scotland, and Malcolm's son, King Edgar, died there in 1107. So first wrote down death in the castle. Malcolm's youngest son, King David, who reigned from 1124 to 1153, developed Edinburgh as a seat of royal power, principally through his administrative reforms, termed by some modern scholars as the Davian Revolution. But between 1139 and 1150, King David held an assembly of nobles and churchmen, a precursor to the Parliament of Scotland, there at the castle. Any buildings or defenses would have been made of timber, although 2 stone buildings are documented to have existed in the 12th century. Of course, St. Margaret's Chapel remained at the summit of the rock, and the second was a church dedicated to St. Mary, which stood on the site of what is now the Scottish National War Memorial. So given that the southern part of the Upper Ward, where Crown Square is now sited, was not suited to be built upon until the construction of the vaults in the 15th century, it seemed probable that any earlier buildings would have been located towards the northern part of the rock, as that is the area where St. Margaret's Chapel stands, because that it would just make sense. This has also been suggested that the chapel is the last remain of a square stone keep, which would have formed the bulk of the 12th century fortification. A structure may have been similar to the keep of Carlisle Castle, where David began after 1135. So David's successor, Malcolm IV, who reigned from 53 to 65, reportedly stayed at Edinburgh more than any other location because he liked it there. But in 74, King William the Lion, who reigned from 1165 to 1214, was captured by the British during the Battle of Alnwick. He was forced to sign the Treaty of Falaise to secure his release in return for surrendering the castle, along with the castles of Berwick, Roxburgh, and Stirling, to the English King Henry II. The castle was then occupied by the English for 12 years until 1186, when it was returned to William as the dowry for his English bride, Ermengarde de Beaumont, who had been chosen for him by the English king.
Totally sounded like Ermagerd, that meme. And I was like, it took me off. My brain went, what? I could see her with her little like 90s hair.
It's pretty much spelled like that too.
That's amazing. I think I might need to change my name.
Yeah, it's spelled Ermengarde.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, when I found out about it, I had to laugh. I was laughing for like 10 minutes straight. I was and I had to compose myself. I was like, all right, I gotta get back on this. So fast forward. So by the end of the 12th century, Edinburgh was reestablished as the main repository of Scotland's official state papers. So it was, all right, cool. Now it's back in Scottish hands. Let's, take care of this. So a century later in 1286, on the death of Alexander III, the throne of Scotland became vacant. Edward I of England was appointed to adjudicate the competing claims for the Scottish crown, but used the opportunity to attempt to establish himself as the feudal overlord of Scotland, because of course. During the negotiations, Edward stayed briefly at Edinburgh Castle and may have received homage there from the Scottish nobles. So, 1296, Edward I fully claims Scotland. In March 1296, he invaded Scotland, unleashing the First War of Scottish Independence. The castle soon came under English control, and after surrendering after a 3-day-long bombardment. Now remember, the castle, like, you had to bring water up to it, so the fact they lasted 3 days,
Not
pretty
bad.
cool.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, not bad at all. Following the siege, Edward had many Scottish legal records and royal treasures moved from the castle to England, because of course he did, because then he could keep an eye on things. A large garrison numbering 325 men were installed in 1300. Edward also brought to Scotland his master builders of the Welsh castles, including Thomas de Houghton and Master Walter of Hereford, both of whom traveled from Wales to Edinburgh. So they literally went from one side of the country all the way up to the other. After the death of Edward I in 1307, England's control over Scotland weakened, because of course it did. March 14th, 1314, a surprise night attack by Thomas Randolph, 1st Earl of Moray, recaptured the castle. John Barber's narrative poem, The Bruise, relates how a party of 30 handpicked men were guided by one William Francis, who was a member of the garrison, who knew of a route along the north face of the castle rock and a place where the wall might be scaled. Making the difficult ascent, Randolph's men scaled the wall, surprised the garrison, and took control, because up to that point, 3 sides didn't have to really patrol or do anything because nobody's coming on that side. Robert the Bruce immediately ordered the sliding of the castle to prevent its reoccupation by the English, because now it's back under Scottish control. 4 months later, Robert the Bruce's army secured victory at the Battle of Bannockburn, which in my notes, I was like, which Sabaton has a song about the battle, which is really cool. Listen, I love their music. It's like majority, like almost all of it is like historical shit, and
I love
it's
that.
amazing.
That sounds awesome.
And if you go on their website, they do the lyrics, and then like at the bottom of the lyrics, they have like more information like about what the song was written about.
That's like right up my alley. I'm in. I'm gonna need you to send me a link to that later.
Definitely. So 1314, Robert the Bruce, who was now king of the Scots, destroys the castle in a way that the English can no longer use it, because he's like, I'm gonna take this apart so that way we can put it back together later, but so that way y'all can't use it. So at this point, only a small chapel remains. The castle was then abandoned for 20 years. Robert the Bruce dies in 1329, and then England sets their sights on Scotland once more, because of course they do. That's just an ongoing thing throughout all of England and Scotland's history. Edward III of England, determined to renew the attempted subjugation of Scotland, and supported the claim of Edward Balliol, who was son of former King John Balliol, over that of Bruce's young son David II. Edward invaded in 1333, which marked the start of the Second War of Scottish Independence, and English forces reoccupied and refortified the castle in 1335. The castle was held by the English until 1341, so a little over 6 years. At which point, it was reclaimed for the Scottish by Sir William Douglas. He and his soldiers dressed up as merchants and just walked in. About 100 English soldiers died by literally losing their heads. So, more death.
That's rough. That's a lot of death.
It's death everywhere. Death for everybody.
And like headless death.
You get death, and you get death, and you get death. Death for everyone!
This time, the Scottish, so William Douglas was the Lord of Lidisdale, and they disguised themselves, as merchants, that they were bringing supplies to the garrison. They drove a cart into the entrance, where they halted it there to prevent the gates from closing. A larger force hidden nearby, rushed in to join them, and that's how the castle was taken. The 100 men that died were men of the garrison, and that I guess they just lost their head. They couldn't control themselves.
Jeez.
1357, the Treaty of Berwick brought the Wars of Independence to an end. David II resumed his rule and set about rebuilding the castle, which became his principal seat of government. David's Tower began in 1363 and was incomplete when David died in 1371. It was completed by his successor, Robert II, in the 1370s. The tower stood on the side of the present Half Moon Battery, which is connected by a section of curtain wall to the smaller Constable Tower, which is a round tower that was built between 1375 and 1375 to 1379, when the Portcullis Gate now stands. In 1400, Henry V of England attempts to reclaim the castle, but fails because he tried to siege the castle but withdrew due to lack of supplies on his part. I feel like if you're going to lay siege to a castle, you need to have all your ducks in a row. By 1436 to 1437, Sir William Crichton was keeper or governor of the castle and soon became Chancellor of Scotland. In an attempt to regain the Regency of Scotland, Sir William sought to break the power of the Douglases, which was the principal noble family in the kingdom. The 16-year-old William Douglas, who was the 6th Earl of Douglas, real original on last names, guys, and his younger brother David were summoned to the castle in 1440. After the so-called Black Dinner had taken place in David's Tower, both boys were basically executed on trumped-up charges in the presence of 10-year-old King James II.
He was throwing a
Lord.
temper tantrum, right?
No, so King James had no issue with the two young, with William and David. He had no issue. He had no problems with it. It was his council that had issue with them. And so basically back then with the Black Dinner, basically if you presented a black bull's head at the dinner, somebody was going to die, essentially. It's kind of where George pulled the Red Wedding dinner from, because the two brothers ended up dying, and the Douglas supporters subsequently besieged the castle, causing damage. Construction continued throughout all this time, with the area now known as Crown Square being laid out over vaults in the 1430s. Royal apartments were built, forming the nucleus of the later palace block, and a great hall was in place by 1458. In 1464, access to the castle was improved when the current approach road up the northeast side of the rock was created to allow easier movement of the Royal Artillery train in and out of the area that is now known as the Upper Ward. 1479, Alexander Stewart, Duke of Albany, was imprisoned in the Tower for plotting against his own brother, King James III. He escaped by getting his guards drunk and then lowering himself from the window on a rope.
This is very like Egyptian, the whole plotting against each other sort of thing, but also good on you for sloshing the guards.
So the Duke fled to France and then to England, where he allied himself with King Edward IV. In 1482, Alexander Stewart marched into Scotland with Richard, Duke of Gloucester, which later became Richard III, and an English army. James III, his own brother, was trapped in the castle from July 22nd to September 29th, 1482, until he successfully negotiated a settlement.
That's so long. I do not have the patience for that. I mean, you're in a castle, so like I get it, but still, I do not have the patience. It's
But
also the
still, water was an
1400s.
issue.
Like it's also the 1400s. What else am I gonna do? Don't leave me in the wilderness. It's just as bad. I'm not a wilderness galley. Sorry.
And you're having to make sure, like, rely on making sure that, like, the castle had plenty of food to support everybody inside before you shut the gates, because otherwise you're not letting people go back and forth. And you can't grow food up there, so you're stuck.
It is the definition of SOL. Shit out of luck.
Really is. So now we're up to the 15th century. Well,
Good
we've been in
lord.
the 15th century a little bit. So the castle was increasingly used as an arsenal and armaments facility. The first known purchase of a gun was in 1384, and the Great Bombardment Mons Meg was delivered to Edinburgh in 1457. She is still there. It is the first recorded mention of an armory for the manufacture of guns in 1474, and by 1498, the master gunner Robert Borthwick was casting bronze guns in Edinburgh. By 1511, Edinburgh was the principal foundry in Scotland, supplanting Stirling Castle with Scottish and European smiths working under Borthwick, who, by 1512, was appointed master melter of the king's guns, which is huge. So their output, he and his workers' output, included guns for the Scottish flagship, the Great Michael, and the Seven Sisters, a set of cannons that was captured by the English at Flodden in 1513. The England's Lord Admiral, Sir Thomas Howard, admired their graceful shape and brilliant finish and declared them the most beautiful cannon for their size and length that he had ever seen. Which I'm sure, as being Lord Admiral, he'd seen some cannons. By 1510, Dutch craftsmen were also producing hand culverins, which is an early firearm. After Flodden, Borthwick continued his work, producing an unknown number of guns, but none survived to this day. He was succeeded by French smiths who began manufacturing hagbutts, which is another type of firearm, in the 1550s, and by 1541, the castle had a stock of guns of 413. Yeah. Great little stockpile.
Right? Like, that's quite a collection, my friend.
The royal family, during all of this, started staying more frequently at the Abbey of Holyrood, about 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers from the castle, because it was probably comfier and a lot less noisy. Around the end of the 15th century, King James IV, who reigned from 1513, built the Palace of Holyrood House by the Abbey as his principal Edinburgh residence, and the castle's role as the royal home subsequently declined. James IV did, however, construct the Great Hall, which was completed in the early 16th century, and the castle featured in his tournaments of the Wild Knight and the Black Lady. And his daughter, Margaret Stuart, was lodged in the castle with her servant, Ellen More. So, because he still had to have somebody there, he installed his daughter. September 1913, James IV was killed at Flodden Field in battle. While expecting the English to press their advantage, the Scots hastily constructed a town wall around Edinburgh and augmented the castle's defenses. Robert Borthwick and a Frenchman, Anton d'Arcis, were involved in designing new artillery defenses and fortifications in 1514, though it appears from lack of evidence that little of the planned work was ever carried out. 3 years later, James V, still only 5 years old, was brought to the castle for safety. Upon his death 25 years later, the crown passed to his week-old daughter, Mary, Queen of Scots.
He was 25 when he died. That's so young. Did you say he was 5 and then he dies 20 years later?
25 years later. He was 30.
25. Oh, he was 30. Still, that's so young. I mean, I get the time, but still, so young. And 1 week old, a 1 week old daughter taking the crown. Talk about responsibility. Yeah. And this is also where we got anxiety.
English invasions followed. Of course they did. As Henry VIII attempted to force a dynastic marriage on Scotland. They're like, hey, I have a son, you have a daughter, we're going to marry the two and just combine, and then I'm going to rule over all of it until they come of age. Obviously, none of that worked out. But Henry VIII was also one that had multiple. He had a habit of marrying and then losing his wives. So he was not a person you'd go to for marriage advice.
No, but also the way you said marrying and then losing. Kind of like a wayward marble. That's how it sounded. Just roll on.
I mean, only one outlived him, so I mean.
Right?
So when the English burnt in the castle in May 1544, the gunner Andrew Mansion, firing from the castle, destroyed an English cannon that was placed to bombard the forework. In 1547, disaffected members of the garrison who resented the regent Aaron, who Henry VIII had put in place, came to Norham Castle and offered to let the English in. Refortification in 1548 included an earthen angle bastion known as the Spur, of the type known as Tres Italien, one of the earliest examples in Britain. Brunstein Castle, which is the home of the traitor Alexander Crichton, was demolished to provide building materials. So they're like, hey, we don't like we don't like you, so we're going to take your house and tear it apart so we can build this. Okay, thanks.
We're just going to use the skeleton. Thank you. Very alien Earth so long ago.
Right. The spur may have been designed by Migliorone Ubaldini, who was an Italian engineer from the court of Henry II of France, and was said to have the arms of France carved on it. James V's widow, Mary of Guise, acted as regent from 1554 until her death at Edinburgh Castle in 1560. So, unfortunately, she only lived 6 years, but as regent.
It's not a long time. It seems like a death sentence.
So 1561, because she's raised Catholic, Mary Queen of Scots returns from France to begin her reign, which was marred by crises and quarrels among the powerful Protestant Scottish nobility, because they didn't like the fact she was Catholic. They didn't like the fact she was and a woman above them in position. Oh my God, horrible things. So they're going to bicker and quarrel about it, because a man should be in place over her as, regent, while she learns how to deal with things over here. Then the fact that she was born and then she was sent to Scotland, or she was sent to France to marry. And so she spoke primarily French. Like, she was raised not in Scotland.
Right? Like, it's got to be hard for her. But can we maybe give her a little bit of a break, or maybe not have set her up that way?
So in 1565, she made an unpopular marriage with Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. On June 19th, 1566, in a small room of the palace, she gave birth to the son James, who would later be king of both Scotland and England, because Elizabeth I died without an heir. Mary made plans to repair the castle and make it somewhat fairer than it had been, because she did like the castle. Mary's reign, however, was brought to an abrupt end 3 months after the murder of Darnley at Kirklefield in 1567. She married James Hepburn, who was the 4th Earl of Bothwell, who was also one of the chief murder suspects.
Jiminy.
Yeah. A large portion of the nobility at that point rebelled, resulting ultimately in the imprisonment and forced abdication of Mary at Lochleven Castle. She escaped and fled to England, seeking asylum, but some of the nobility remained faithful to her cause. Edinburgh Castle was initially handed by its captain James Balfour to the regent Moray, who had forced Mary's abdication and now held power in the name of the infant King James VI. Shortly after the Battle of Langside in May 1568, Moray appointed Sir William Kirkcaldy of Grange keeper of the castle. So he's like, here's the keys to the castle. Take care of it. Don't fuck shit up. Kirkcaldy was a trusted lieutenant of the regent, but after Moray's murder in January 1570, his allegiance to the king's cause began to waver. Because it's like, I don't know about this. Intermittent civil war continued between the supporters of the two monarchs, and in April 1571, Dumbarton Castle fell to the king's men. Well, technically, you're all the king's men because the last royal abdicated, but you know.
Feels very Humpty Dumpty.
Yes. Under the influence of William Maitland of Lethington, Mary's secretary, Kirkcaldy changed sides, occupying the town and castle of Edinburgh for Queen Mary and against the new regent, the Earl of Lennox. This standoff was not resolved until 2 years later and was known as the Lang Siege, from the Scots word for long. Hostilities began in May with a month-long siege of the town and a second short siege in October. Blockades and skirmishes continued all the time, and Kirkcaldy continued to refortify the castle. The King's party appealed to Elizabeth I of England for assistance as they lacked the artillery and money required to reduce the castle, fearing that Kirkcaldy would receive aid from France and the Duke of Alba in the Spanish Netherlands. Elizabeth, of course, sent ambassadors to negotiate because she's like, work it out. I don't want to be bothered with this. Work it out. And in July 1572, a truce was agreed and the blockade was lifted. The town was effectively surrendered to the King's party, with Kirkcaldy confined to the castle. The truce, however, expired January the 1st, 1573, and Kirkcaldy began bombarding the town again. His supplies of powder and shot, however, were running low, and despite having 40 cannons available, there were only 7 gunners in the garrison. I feel like, well, I mean, some of them probably died, but I was just like, I feel like that's not mathing.
No, it doesn't seem well prepared. Like, we have all the stuff, but none of the humans to make the stuff work. Seems a little like it wasn't planned well.
Of course not. The King's forces, now with the Earl of Morton in charge as regent, were making headway with plans for another siege. So trenches were done to surround the castle, and St. Margaret's Well was poisoned.
Ugh.
By February, all Queen Mary's other supporters had surrendered to the new regent, but Kirkcaldy resolved to resist despite water shortages within the castle. The garrison continued to bombard the town, killing a number of citizens. They also made sorties to set fires, burning 100 homes in the town and then firing on anyone attempting to put out the flames. Because they're like, we're going to drive you out one way or the other. Like, we don't care if we kill everybody here.
When you're out, you're out.
You good?
Me? Yeah, I said when you're out, you're out.
All I heard was, when you're out, I was like, okay.
Oh, no, that's just my voice.
In April, a force of around 1,000 English troops led by Sir William Drury arrived in Edinburgh. They were followed by 27 cannons from Berwick-upon-Tweed, including one that had been cast within the castle herself and had been captured by the English at Flodden. The English troops built an artillery emplacement on Castle Hill, immediately facing the east walls of the castle, and 5 others to the north, south, and west. By May 17th, these batteries were ready and the bombardment began. Over the next 12 days, the gunners dispatched around 3,000 shots at the castle. On May 2nd, the south wall of David's Tower collapsed, and the next day the Constable's Tower also fell. Debris blocked the castle entrance as well as the fore-well, although this had already run dry, because it's not meant for constant usage. On May 26th, the English attacked and captured the spur, the outer fortification of the castle, which had been isolated by the collapse. The following day, Kirkcaldy emerged from the castle by a ladder after calling for a ceasefire to allow negotiations for a surrender to take place. When it was made clear that he would not be allowed to go free even if he ended the siege, Kirkcaldy resolved to continue the resistance, but the garrison threatened to mutiny. Therefore, he arranged for Drury and his men to enter the castle on May 20, preferring to surrender to the English rather than the regent Morton. The castle was handed over to George Douglas of Parkhead, the regent's brother, and the garrison was allowed to go free. In contrast, Kirkcaldy, his brother James, and two jewelers, James Mossman and James Cloak, who had been minting coins in Mary's name inside the castle, were all hanged at the cross in Edinburgh on August 3rd. So just piling more bodies, left and right. All the bodies, all the bodies, all the bodies.
The Oprah of bodies.
So much of the castle got rebuilt by the regent, including the spur, the new half-moon battery, the portcullis gate, and some of the works were supervised by William McDowell, who was the master of work 15 years earlier that had repaired David's Tower. So he's like, hey, I know how to do this again.
Been here, done this.
So the Half Moon Battery, while impressive in size, is considered by historians to have been an ineffective and outdated artillery fortification, and it may have been due to a shortage of resources, although the battery's position obscured the ancient David's Tower and enhanced the prominence of the palace block, and has been seen as a significant decision. So the battered palace block remained unused, particularly after James VI departed to become King of England in 1603. James had repairs carried out in 1584, and in 1615 and 1616, more repairs were carried out in preparation for his return visit to Scotland, because they're like, oh, we need to fix this. Let's do this.
Fix the things, please.
Right. So the mason William Wallace and the master of works James Murray introduced an early Scottish example of a double pile block. The principal external features were the 3-story oriel windows on the east facade facing the town, and emphasizing that this was a palace rather than just a place of defense. So they're like, we want this to actually look like a palace now, not just a fortress.
The aesthetic is now mattering.
During his visit in 1617, James held court in the refurbished palace block, but still preferred to sleep at Holyrood, because I don't blame him. It had all the things, so it made sense. So this was a little nifty. So in 1691, King James granted Sir William Alexander the land in North America between New England and Newfoundland as Nova Scotia, which means New Scotland. To promote the settlement and plantation of the new territory, the baronetage of Nova Scotia was created in 1624. Under Scots law, baronets had to take sasine by symbolically receiving the earth and stone of the land of which they were baronet. To make this possible, Nova Scotia was so distant, the king declared that the sasine could be taken either in the new province or alternatively at the castle of Edinburgh as the most eminent and principal place of Scotland. James' successor, Charles I, visited Edinburgh only once, hosting a feast in the Great Hall and staying the night before his Scottish coronation in 1633. And that was the last occasion that a reigning monarch resided in the castle. 1639, in response to Charles's attempt to impose episcopacy on the Scottish Church, civil war broke out between the king's forces and the Presbyterian Covenanters. Presbyterians, led by Alexander Leslie, captured the castle after a short siege, although it was restored to Charles after the Peace of Berwick in June of the same year. Peace was short-lived, though. And the following year, Presbyterians took the castle again, this time after a 3-month siege, during which time the garrison ran out of supplies. The spur was badly damaged and then was demolished in the 1640s. The royalist commander James Graham, 1st Marquis of Montrose, was imprisoned there after his capture in 1650. So now we're seeing it being held as also a prison. So now we're holding people. Yay!
Great.
Yeah. So more sieges
Yeah.
happen. Yeah. More
Fluent,
sieges.
thank you. I'm not fluent in Scottish Gaelic, but I am fluent in sarcasm. Thank you all.
So after his restoration in 1660, Charles II opted to maintain a full-time standing army based on Cromwell's New Model Army. So from that point in time until 1923, a garrison was continuously maintained at the castle.
Right?
So the medieval royal castle got transformed into a garrison fortress, but was continuing to see military and political action. The Marquis of Argyll was imprisoned here in 1661 when Charles II settled old scores with his enemies following his return to the throne. Because, of course, he's like, fuck y'all. 20 years later, Argyll's son, the 9th Earl, was also imprisoned in the castle for religious nonconformism in the reign of James the 7th. He escaped by disguising himself as his sister's footman, but was recaptured and returned to the castle after his failed rebellion to oust James from the throne in 1685. So, like, people just escaping, but not very well. So James VII was deposed and exiled by the Glorious Revolution of 1688, which installed William of Orange as the King of England. Not long after, in 1689, the Estates of Scotland, after convening to accept William formally as their new king, demanded that Duke of Gordon, governor of the castle, surrender the fortress. Gordon, who had been appointed by James VII as a fellow Catholic, refused. Of course he did. In March of 89, the castle was blockaded by 7,000 troops against a garrison of 160 men, which was further weakened by religious disputes because you have different religions in the garrison. So on March 18th, Viscount Dundee, intent on raising a rebellion in the Highlands, climbed up the western side of the castle rock to urge Gordon to hold the castle against the new king. Gordon, of course, agreed, but during the ensuing siege, he refused to fire upon the town, while the besiegers inflicted little damage on the castle. Despite Dundee's initial successes in the north, Gordon eventually surrendered on June 14th due to dwindling supplies and having lost 70 men during the 3-month siege. The castle was almost taken in the First Jacobite Rising in support of James Stewart, the Old Pretender. 15. September 8th, just 2 days after the Rising began, a party of around 100 Jacobite Highlanders, led by Lord Drummond, attempted to scale the walls with the assistance of members of the garrison. However, the rope ladder that was lowered by the castle sentries was too short, and the alarm was raised after a change of watch. The Jacobites fled, while the deserters within the castle were hanged or flogged.
An alarm was raised once they saw a man hanging from the bottom of a ladder, just swinging back and forth like a modern-day Tarzan.
Like,
worst game of pinata ever.
Right? You didn't even give him the right size stick. And I can't change the level. How hard is this going to be?
Just like, why did y'all not look at it and go, we need to add some more to this?
That's only 4 Jamies high. I'm going to need at least 6 Jamies on this ladder.
Right?
I mean, I'm not spatially aware, but apparently they weren't either.
1728, General Wade reported that the castle's defenses were decayed and inadequate, and a major strengthening of the fortifications were carried out throughout the 20s and 30s. This was the period when most of the artillery defenses and bastions on the north and west sides were built. So the last military action at the castle took place during the Second Jacobite Rising of 1745. Jacobite army under Charles Edward Stuart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, captured Edinburgh without a fight in 1745, but the castle remained in the hands of its aging deputy governor, General George Preston, who refused to surrender. Of course, because he's like, nah, fuck you.
We ain't friends.
After their victory over the government army at Prestonpans on September 21st, the Jacobites attempted to blockade the castle. Preston's response was to bombard the Jacobite positions within the town. After several buildings had been demolished and 4 people killed, Charles called off the blockade. The Jacobites themselves had no heavy guns with which to respond, and by November they had marched into England, leaving Edinburgh to the castle garrison. Because they're like, well, fuck y'all too. We're out.
Done with this shit.
Over the next century, the castle vaults were used to hold prisoners of war during several conflicts, including the 7 Years' War, which took place 1756 to 1763, the American War of Independence 1775 to 1783, and the Napoleonic Wars 1803 to 1815. During this time, several new buildings were erected within the castle, including powder magazines, storerooms, the governor's house, which was added in 1742, and the new barracks, which were there from 1796 to 1799. A massive prison break in 1811 in which 49 prisoners of war escaped via a hole in the south wall persuaded the authorities.
Just a hole. Just a hole.
Just a
They
hole.
were like, you know what? That seems tiny enough. You haven't fed us well, so we're just going to scooch out this way.
I mean, because it was 1811, so I mean, I doubt they were feeding them well. Just enough to keep y'all alive, but not enough to grow fat on. So they persuaded the authorities that the castle vaults were no longer suitable as a prison. This use ceased in 1814, and the castle began gradually to assume a different role as a national monument. In 1818, Sir Walter Scott was given permission to search the castle for the Crown of Scotland, as it was believed to have been lost after the union of Scotland and England in 1707. Breaking into a sealed room, which is now known as the Crown Room, and unlocking a chest he found in the room, he rediscovered the honours of Scotland, which were then put on public display with an entry charge of 1 shilling.
Okay.
Like,
Gotta make
I guess the Crown of Scotland wasn't so lost if it was in a sealed room and a locked chest. Right. Somebody knew it was there.
Maybe they did, and so the knowledge was lost, but the crown was not.
Yeah, probably. 1822, George IV made a visit to Edinburgh, becoming the first reigning monarch to visit the castle since Charles II. 1829, the cannon Mons Meg was returned from the Tower of London, where it had been taken as part of the process of disarming Scotland after the Jacobite Rising 45, and the palace began to open up to visitors during the 80s. St. Margaret's Chapel was rediscovered in 1845, having been used as a storehouse for many years. I'm sure she was thrilled about that.
Right? She was like, come on.
Works in the 1880s funded by Edinburgh publisher William Nelson and carried out by Hippolyte Blanc saw the Argyle Tower built over the Porticus Gate and the Great Hall restored after years of use as a barracks. A new gatehouse was built in 1888, and during the 19th century, several schemes were put forward for rebuilding the whole castle as a Scottish baronial-style chateau. Work began in 1858, but was soon abandoned, and only the hospital building was eventually remodeled in 1897. Following the death of Prince Albert in 1961, the architect David Bryce put forward a proposal for a 50-meter, 160 feet keep as a memorial, but Queen Victoria objected that, and the scheme was not pursued because she's like, I don't like that.
Not on my watch.
1905, Responsibility for the castle was transferred from War of Office to Office of Works, although the garrison remained until 1923, when the troops then moved to Redford Barracks in the southwest of Edinburgh. So basically, they're just like, we're going to keep you here until we have a better place to put y'all. Sorry, guys. So the castle was again used as a prison during the First World War when Red Clydesider David Kirkwood was confined to the military prison block, and during the Second World War when downed German Luftwaffe pilots were captured.
All right. I mean,
they had to put them somewhere.
Yeah, they had to go somewhere, and this thing has been used for a garrison and everything else. So aesthetics be damned.
Right. Pretty much. And also, there's only one way in and one way out on this place. So.
And it's not by ladder over the wall.
It's either on like 3 sides, essentially, or out the same way everybody else does. So the position of governor of the castle was vacant from 1876 until 1935, when it became an honorary title for the general officer commanding in Scotland, where the first holder being Lieutenant Governor Sir Archibald Cameron of Loch Hill. The castle was passed into care of Historic Scotland when it was established in 1991 and was designated a scheduled ancient monument in 1993. The buildings and structures of the castle are further protected by 24 separate listings, including 13 at Category A, which is the highest level of protection for a historic building in Scotland, and special care was taken when installing 31 kilowatt solar panels on the roof of the War Memorial, which is obscured by the parapet. The Old and New Towns of Edinburgh, a World Heritage Site inscribed by UNESCO. Thank you. UNESCO. In 1995 is described as dominated by a medieval fortress. So there is the 1 o'clock gun, which is a time signal fired every day at precisely 1 p.m. I'm glad they don't do it at 1 a.m. as well.
But also weird, it's 1 p.m. and not like noon.
So except for Sunday, Good Friday, and Christmas Day. Those are the only 3 days they don't fire it.
All right.
So the time gun was established in 1861 as a time signal for ships in the harbor of Leith and the Firth of Forth, which is 2 miles or 3 kilometers away. It complemented the time ball, which was established on the Nelson Monument in 1852, but was useless as a visual signal in foggy weather. So, makes sense. Because sound travels relatively slowly, approximately 343 meters per second, which is 770 miles per hour, a map was produced in 1861 to show the actual time when the sound of the gun would be heard at various locations across Edinburgh.
I appreciate the ingenuity. That's kind of cool.
Right. So the original gun was an 18-pound muzzle-loading cannon, which needed 4 men to load and was fired from the Half Moon Battery. This was
job security.
This was replaced in 1913 by a 32-pound breech loader, and in May 1952 by a 25-pound howitzer. The present 1 o'clock gun is an L118 light gun brought into service on November 30th, 2001. So, they've changed it to kind of make it more modern.
Yeah, makes sense. Because I highly doubt we still need 4 guys doing this from the original.
So, the only time it has ever been fired as a use in war was April 2nd, 1916, which was a Sunday. Remember, it doesn't fire on a Sunday. At an unknown time of day, the gun was fired in vain at a German Zeppelin during an air raid. So they're like, hey, we got you.
Gonna get that guy.
Didn't exactly happen.
No, but also
didn't reach it, but
everybody's like, is it 1 o'clock? Also, it's Sunday.
Right. What day is it? What time is it? I don't know.
Somebody thinks they're like late for work. They're like, I thought it was Sunday.
Right. I took too long at my lunch.
I thought my shift start later.
So the gun is now fired from Hill's Mount Battery, which is on the north face of the castle, by the district gunner from the 105th Regiment Royal Artillery. Although the gun is no longer used for its original purpose, the ceremony has become a popular tourist attraction. So the longest serving district gunner, who is Staff Sergeant Thomas McCabe, MBE, nicknamed Tam the Gun. I love the fact that was his nickname. Tam the Gun. He fired the 1 o'clock gun from 1979 until his retirement in January 2005. So, like, a long fucking time. He helped establish the 1 o'clock gun association, which opened a small exhibit at Mills Mount, and published a book entitled, What Time Does Edinburgh's 1 o'clock Gun Fire?
Stop. That's the title of the book.
Yes!
You shitting me? I'm not even a writer and could do better.
I just love how sarcastic it is, though.
Right,
What
but
time does the 1 o'clock gun fire?
I'm
1 o'clock!
Also personally injured by this. That's bananas. But good on you, dude.
So, in 2006, Sergeant Jamie Shannon, nicknamed Shannon the Cannon.
That one's
I'm
better.
loving their nicknames.
That one's better.
Became the 29th district gunner, and in 2006, bombarder Allison Jones became the first woman to fire the gun. Love that for her. So one last little bit before we head into the spookies. So the castle has become a recognizable symbol of Edinburgh and of Scotland because, of course, you see it when they do the military tattoo. It appears in stylized form on the coats of arms of the city of Edinburgh Castle and the University of Edinburgh. It is also featured on the badge of number 603 City of Edinburgh Squadron, which was based at RAF Turnhouse, which is now Edinburgh Airport. During the Second World War, images of the castle are used as a logo by organizations including Edinburgh Rugby, Edinburgh Evening News, Hibernia FC, which is football club, and the Edinburgh Marathon. It also appears on the Castle series of Royal Mail postage stamps, which I really want to get some of those. I will pay. I will like give you the money to get me the stamps. Like,
somebody find those, please.
Right? I want to have them, and I would frame them or something. Like, I'm not going to use them. I'm going to frame them.
No, that's a keepsake.
Exactly. Has been represented on various issues of banknotes issued by Scottish clearing banks. In the 1960s, the castle was illustrated on the £5 notes that were issued by the National Commercial Bank of Scotland, and since 1987, it has featured on the reverse £1 notes issued by the Royal Bank of Scotland. Since 2009, the castle, which is part of Edinburgh's World Heritage Site, has appeared on £10 notes issued by the Clydesdale Bank. The castle is a focal point for annual fireworks displays, which mark Edinburgh's Hogmanay, which is their New Year celebrations, and the end of the Edinburgh Festival in the summers.
Seems lovely. Can't say I'm upset with a celebration with some fireworks.
So now we're going to jump into the spookies.
Great.
Now we got all the history done. And that was it condensed.
Listen, I don't mind history. However, there comes a point, because I lived with so many Scottish and Irish people growing up, going to church as often as I did with my folks, you just kind of get glazed over. And it's not that I don't love Rachel's research. Imagine having 40 some odd priests or nuns or both hanging out with you, telling you all of this history all the time from when you were 4 until you were 18. It's exhausting.
Listen, it was exhausting going all the way back from the very beginning, all the way into present day. So, like,
it. I love
It was a
every
lot,
part of
though,
it.
to
I
dive
love
through.
every part of it. I just can't wait for the haunted shit.
I know, it's what you live for. So we have the lone Piper boy.
A boy.
A boy.
A wee lad.
Yes, with his bagpipes.
Does he have a head?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if we've had bagpipers without heads, it's a question.
Valid. We have a drummer boy that doesn't have a head later on.
But does he have hands?
Yeah, because he plays his drum. He has to
The
have hands to play his
bagpiper
drum.
didn't have a head to play the bagpipe. This is not an outstanding question. I now need to know,
That is
because if
valid.
we're missing the key body parts to play the instrument, I have concerns.
Okay, anyways, Bagpiper Boy. So, centuries ago, there was a secret network of tunnels that were discovered under the Royal Mile, which is what went from the castle towards Holyrood Palace, which it makes sense that that's what they called it. So, at this point, this was, I don't know. It was probably 1500s, probably. I don't know. So, the men were curious to find out where the tunnels went, because they don't know where it goes. They need to figure it out, make a map, kind of thing. So they sent down a young bagpiper into a maze of tunnels that they have no clue where they go or start or end.
Sounds echo.
Wait, did they give him a rope?
God, no.
No, they followed him above him. So he's in the tunnels. They're above him on the land, mapping out as he's going through the tunnels.
As he's playing his wee tunes.
Right. So that way they could hear him. Because they could just faintly hear him through the earth.
Until his tiny butt gets bored or lost. Ugh. I have my own children. I know how this goes. Can you imagine? I'm tired. I'm tired, Grandpa.
Well, you kind of guessed it, Meg.
Yes, and also, aw.
All of a sudden, his bagpipes just stop. They no longer hear him. So,
No.
because they were able to hear for a while the sounds, and then all of a sudden they stop. And so several parties went down to look for the lad, because at this point they have up to this point kind of mapped out. So they're like, okay, we do this, but they couldn't find him or his bagpipes.
He
He was just
disappeared?
gone, just disappeared.
Great. He was eaten
Which
by Nessie.
is odd because nobody saw him leave, because they had somebody standing at the entrance of the tunnels. So nobody saw him leave. They saw him go in, never came out, and he stopped playing. Oh, since the parties involved were so disturbed at his sudden disappearance, the city council ordered that the tunnel entrance be sealed and never be reopened, sealing that poor lad down there for all eternity.
Right? I'm like, he's stuck. Why would you do that?
Mm-hmm. So some visitors today some visitors report that they can still hear his bagpipes under the Royal Mile, especially near the area where his pipes went silent.
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I'm just thinking of the masonry, like the masons putting up the brickwork and everything, and all of a sudden you just hear the bagpipes of Scotland start playing, and you're like, nope, just butter it up and just put it up there.
I mean, but if all of a sudden they heard the bagpipes, I feel like they would have stopped and been like, hey, you follow the sound of our voice, you come out of the tunnel, because
Or just encourage him to go backwards.
Right,
The rope
because
would have been a great idea.
So they searched for him for a couple of months and never found him. And at that point, the city council was like, nope, we're done. Slap some bricks in it. We're done. So when the road and city noise fall silent is when some visitors state that they can hear the pipes. And so now we're going to go into the headless boy.
He and Bagpipe Boy are hanging out together. They're playing their own little Scottish band. Gallic
Well,
Ghosts.
considering one's above ground, one's under the ground. So, I mean, probably.
The Gallic Ghouls.
So this legend goes back to 1650. I actually got a year for this one. When a headless ghost was first spotted playing an old Scottish war tune along the battlements. His spirit first appeared when Oliver Cromwell's men were laying siege to the castle, which gives credit to the belief that the drummer boy only appears when the castle is under attack. Well, since the last time the castle was under attack was during the Jacobite Rising in 1745, nobody's seen his spirit since.
He's on tour.
I told you, Meg.
Nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows what happened to the kid's head either, but some people say that a cannonball took it off in one of the...
Here's the thing. You said nobody knows what happens to his head, and I immediately was like, oh, it was blown off. Like, my brain just immediately said that, and then you were like, it was a cannonball. I was like, damn it.
It automatically autocorrected to finish it.
Pretty much. I mean, because it would only make sense.
Annoyed when
and
that
so
happened.
he's still just... He was just, doing forewarnings. But nobody's seen him since 1745, but it's been written down word of mouth. So now we have the gray lady. At least she's not white.
No, but it's so close. Come on. Red, purple, blue.
Gray.
Fine.
So there are two possible ladies that this could actually be. Either Lady Janet Douglas or Mary de Guise, mother of Mary Queen of Scots. So I'll do the second lady first because there's less information about her. So Marie died June 1560. Her body was kept in the castle for months, and witnesses state they saw her walking through the castle after her death. And so that's why some people think that might be her. But nobody really, talks to her and asks her, hey, what was your name? So for Lady Janet, she was the sister of the 6th Earl of Angus, Archibald Douglas, who had married Margaret, also known as Mary Tudor, after she became the Dowager Queen when James IV died. Like, I had to be like, which Earl of Angus was this to make it make sense in my brain. So James V hated Archibald and the Douglas family, which unfortunately included Lady Janet. December 1528, James V broke free of the Douglases' family, and Janet was summoned for treason because he's like, I'm going to do whatever I can to get rid of this whole family. She was accused with others for bringing the supporters of the Earl of Angus to Edinburgh in June. However, James called her our Levitas Dame Janet Douglas in a license in 1529, which allowed her and a co-accused Patrick Chatteris of Carthagirty to go on pilgrimage and be exempt from legal proceedings. However, historian Jamie Cameron thinks Janet did not go on pilgrimage, as she was under a number of legal actions due to being charged with poisoning her husband, John Leon, who was 6th Lord Glamis, who had died September 17th, 1528. This case was dropped, and Janet was able to marry Archibald Campbell of Skipness by the summer of 1532. And I just want to interject this. So many men were named Archibald then. Oh my God.
It's the John of the 1600s or whatever it was.
Johns, James, Archibald, William, all of them. By July 17th, 1537, Janet was convicted of plotting to poison the king because she supposedly poisoned her first husband.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And communicating with her brothers, the Earl of Anguish and George Douglas. So Janet was imprisoned with her now husband, Archibald Campbell, who escaped what was later killed in a dungeon of Edinburgh Castle. And it was easy for James to imprison Janet, but actually convicting her was more difficult. To gain evidence, James had Janet's family members and servants subjected to torture. Guys, that's never the best way to get information out of somebody. They will agree to whatever you want them to say
I mean,
to stop the pain.
you start trying to take my fingernails, I'm going to make shit up. Whatever you want to hear.
Fingernails, stretching, shortening them, tongue pinchers, thumb twisters. Like, they had all kinds of fucking torture things. Do not deep dive on that because it is nightmare fuel. So because of them admitting to whatever he wanted them to admit to, Janet was convicted and burned at the stake on July 17th, 1537 at the castle, which her young son was forced to watch. She is said to haunt Glamis Castle as well as Edinburgh Castle because that's where she was happy at, was Glamis. Not long after her execution, reports of a weeping gray lady walking through the castle halls started coming in.
The crying is a little much.
I mean, her young son had to watch it, so I'm sure she was probably crying about that.
That does definitely suck. But I figure, again, if you can manifest as a light, you can appear. If you can whisper, say it with your chest. If you're going to cry, give me some words, give me some context. So if you need me to go take somebody out on your behalf, I'm happy to do it. I just don't know what you need if you're just crying. We have standards here. Rise to meet them.
This is true. But also the fact that burning at the stake is not a quick death at all.
No, not at all. I would expect a wail. If you had been like, oh, she's been heard wailing, like just straight scream moaning, that would have made more sense to me.
Right. Anyways, so the dungeons. So since the castle was used as a prison and prisoners were kept in the dungeons, it was also a place of torture, pain, and misery. There have been many orbs and strange light anomalies that have been captured on camera by many different tourists. So they can't even say like, oh, well, it's just your camera or this. It's on various different all throughout the years. There once was a desperate prisoner who wanted to escape so badly that he snuck into a dung barrel, into a shit barrel.
Poop shoot? No, thank you.
Not even a poop chute. Like, they just
Poop
shoveling it out and
bucket.
sticking it. Yeah,
A buttload of poop.
Essentially, yes. He probably hoped to escape once the barrel was emptied outside the castle gates, but he wasn't quite so lucky. The barrel he was in was emptied from the highest point of Castle Rock. And below that were sharp rocks. And so when the barrel was dumped out, he went with it onto the rocks and was killed. So his sudden death supposedly keeps him at the castle. And there are claims of visitors who felt as if someone tried to push them off a hill. When they look behind them, they see nobody, but they do admit to smelling the pungent smell of poop.
No. To, like, for that to be the thing that follows you around in the afterlife? Shitty situation.
Right. Well, to end on a little bit of happier note, there's also the pet cemetery. The cat's face. No, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. It's not like Stephen King's books, okay?
No, I don't think you understand. Dead animals, like ghost animals, are difficult because they don't respond to normal commands. You tell them no, they don't.
Of course they're not.
You know, and it's I don't know, Meg, if you've had this problem, but I've had this problem.
Animals don't bug me. They leave me alone.
Be thankful.
I am.
Well, there's just so there's a pet cemetery that's located within the walls of the castle. There have been reported sightings of a black dog figure. It's believed that it was a royal watchdog and that it is continuing what it was trained for to protect the castle and its owners.
We do know what spectral black dog figures actually are, right? Okay, just making
Of
sure.
course.
Thought maybe we just
Tell our listeners, Meg, what are spectral black dogs?
no. I mean, just like harbingers of death, typically, like an omen of sorts. We don't pet the spectral black doggies. Just as a note, and don't follow them either. And then maybe don't get on that plane if you saw one.
Train or boat.
Any form of transportation. Maybe stay inside and don't eat anything weird. Check your allergies.
The whole thing with the Harry Potter series, and he saw the Grim when he was out in the road, and then he gets on the bus, and then subsequently everything bad happened after that, even though it was his godfather. It doesn't matter. It's a harbinger of bad omens.
But we're not doing that in Scotland, apparently. We don't believe in that. It's just a watchdog.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
it could have actually just been,
Somebody's errant pet that
it
was
could
out.
just be like a shadow of a dog that was there. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I got for Scotland, for Edinburgh at least.
Ooh.
Yes.
I love it.
I didn't hate it at all. That was nice.
Okay, good.
I
There's
mean,
a lot of history. I'm sorry.
maybe the headless child is probably rough, but we don't see him very often
And
because people aren't attacking
and the
things.
poor pipe player that got bricked in.
That's crappy. I don't like that. Like, I get it, but also, why did you send a child down there? Why did you send a man?
I love bagpipers, and my mom goes to this place out in, I think it's in Monterey. I'll double check with my mom. And there's a bagpiper that comes. Hold on. I can tell you. It was 2023, just before we got married. I know, because I broke up with my girlfriend that summer. My mom's like, "Oh, how's Katie?" And I was like, "About that."
She who shall not be named right now.
No, she's great. We love her.
I know she's great. I just, at that moment, it's a sore subject. Hello.
So these are my folks, my
Hello.
parents.
Hello, parents.
And there was a bagpiper. So right at the end, when sunset happens, it's a bagpiper and his son. And they come by and they walk past on the hotel grounds. I can't tell you the location, but I can tell you it was quite fantastic. Hold on, I got a menu here. The Ocean, that doesn't give me anything. The Ocean Terrace, that's the bar that we ate at. But this was the food. Anyway,
Yum.
yeah.
I
I
will
am
say the
getting
food
hungry.
is quite delicious.
Scottish food is delicious. I know
Started-
Meg
But yeah.
ran through an Irish castle. It was in Ireland, right?
I did stay in an Irish castle for like 5 whole days. It was lovely. There were ghosts there, but they were kind. There was a child in my room. She had eyes.
We
Well, at
did.
least she had eyes, so
Yes.
we appreciate that.
But she liked to unlock the window while I was in bed. And I was like, I will unlock it in the morning. Can you just leave that portion locked, please?
I enjoyed today. It was quite fun. I was able to space out a little bit and recollect spoons because the girls know I've been depleting spoons very, very quickly because I've been trying to turn over all of the videos as quickly as possible for you monsters.
October is a busy month, and we appreciate you, darling.
Thank you.
Yes, we do.
I appreciate the both of you for allowing my candor because I ain't got much going on upstairs most of the time.
True,
You're
there are
like
things
Meg.
going on. There's just many things.
You're like Meg. You just as it's coming out your mouth, you're just like, oh, that would be funny.
Right. And it's not even like I'm trying to be funny. Things just come out and I'm like, well, I don't know how it sounds on the outside, but on the inside it sounded okay, so here we go.
I just had fun today. I enjoyed listening. It was great. I love you both very much.
Love
Who
you.
you do?
Hold on, I can do the kid thing, the one that kids do now. Just give me 1 second. That's the one I can figure out how to do, because the other one, I don't know. It's a lot. It's just 4 minutes of silence as we make hand gestures. People are like, I think the audio's out. No, we just need both hands.
No, we're just being goofy. We're just being goofy.
You know, it's the end of the show, which means
Do the stupidest of shit.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't
Please
bagpipe in
don't.
tunnels by yourself.
Don't bagpipe in tunnels. Do not lose your head due to cannonballs, please. Avoid cannon fire.
And avoid black dogs. Well, unless they're alive black dogs and they're pets.
Avoid dead black
then
dogs.
it's okay. That part.
And possibly black bears. Stay feral.
Well, obviously. Bite the hand.
We'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
That's all for this episode. Stay feral, and we'll see you party possums next time.